Internet, welcome back to the channel. It's a late afternoon on a gloomy November day here in Milton, Ontario, and today I've decided to drive over to Rattlesnake Point, which is a conservation area nearby, for a quick and fun hike. Rattlesnake Point is a pretty popular destination for hikers, backpackers, cyclists, and rock climbers, and it's an easy way to experience some breathtaking views and enjoy nature around the Greater Toronto area, if that's something that floats your boat, of course. You know, I generally try to stay away from the news media as much as I can because I think it promotes the overconsumption of negative information about the world, giving us the illusion that by staying informed, we somehow have some level of control over what happens to us and to the world. Yes, there are a few who have the power to make change, but for most of us, the consumption of news only keeps us trapped in an ever-expanding bubble of anxiety, cynicism, and polarization. It enforces the arbitrary categorizations of us versus them that we have created throughout history, pulling us further and further apart. Lately, I find that the news that does end up making its way to me portrays such an extreme level of division and hatred among people. Divisions between nations, between ethnicities, between religions, between political ideologies, even between genders. The irony is that we increasingly preach equality, yet we are only getting more and more divided. For those of us who have been around for a while, we understand the effect of echo chambers and that there's more beauty to life than the misery we hear about. But what about the youth who grew up on their iPhones and their iPads, getting bombarded by this information from social media that they consume? I wonder what impact all this negative information has on them. I want to reflect today on this idea of us versus them. Why do these divisions exist? And are these divisions simply an inherent reality of life that makes us doomed to the resulting conflict among us? Or is there another reality that can be taught, perceived, and adopted in the hope of making this world a more beautiful place for us, and more importantly, for our kids to live in? The reality that we are all indeed one. Divisions inherently arise from categorizations. On the surface, categorization is a simple concept. This is a tree, and the long pieces of wood sticking out of these trees are branches, and the colorful objects on those branches are called leaves. That blue patch in between those branches is the sky. That chirping noise in the background comes from a bird. A few moments ago was the past, and what will come a few moments from now, I will call the future. We have categorized everything around us. We needed to, after all, in order to communicate with each other and in order to manipulate the environment. How else would we know that a knife has to be made from a rock and not from a leaf? The ability and the need to categorize our world came about when we evolved our intellect from our primitive brains. Categorization is a direct result of our intellect, and an intellectual exercise we play to understand what it means to be. But do the leaves on these trees know that they are leaves? That they are something different from the branches that they exist on? That they are distinct from the trees that gave life to them in order to help them transpire? Do the trees know that they are distinct from the sky above them? Of course not. That's all quite absurd. The leaf, the branch, the tree, the sky, they're all part of the same thing. They are one. It is the same water in the blue sky above that drops onto the dirt below, that is absorbed by the roots and transformed chemically along with other nutrients in the soil to create this thing that I call a tree and its leaves. It is the same fruit that was part of that tree that the bird ate to give it the energy to sing. It is the same oxygen that is released by these leaves that I inhale to fire up my cells and give me the life and ultimately my identity. So, divisions arise from the categorizations that we make about the world that we live in, to make sense of it with the only thing that we have learned to trust, our intellect. And these categorizations give rise to our identities. And it is the need to protect these identities that create the ideas of us versus them, that gives rise to our self-interests and the conflicts between people. Throughout human history, wars have been fought over imaginary boundaries drawn in the soil to distinguish people based on culture and creed. Thousands have been and are massacred in the names of identities that are simply a matter of perspective. How do we find a way out of this trap that we find ourselves in? Remember that a human lifetime is nothing but a speck in the history of the universe. Outside of this speck of time, we were and will be dust that gets blown around by the wind. What is this identity then that we find so much glory in? Can we really look at the ashes in a grave and tell which part of the world that ash came from, or what its beliefs were? We drink the same water, we breathe the same air, we bleed the same blood. These identities are, at the end of the day, simply ghosts that we have conjured up. The reality is that we are all one. There is an excerpt I once read in the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It goes like this: but to tear down a factory or to revolt against a government or to avoid a repair of a motorcycle because it is a system is to attach effects rather than the causes. And as long as the attach is upon the effects only, no change is possible. The true system, the real system, is our present construction of systematic thought itself, rationality itself. And if a factory is torn down but the rationality which produced it is left standing, then that rationality will simply produce another factory. I think a solution lies somewhere in this excerpt. We cannot rely on the very systems of categorization that create division and conflict between us to become the source of a solution to these conflicts. By doing so, all we will do is create a temporary stopgap that is as weak as the imaginary boundaries that we have created. We cannot rationalize our way out of this problem, because rationality is exactly what created these divisions in the first place. Rather, the only solution to getting rid of conflict is to destroy the systems of categorization that we have built into our society. Teach children the universal truth that they are the same as their neighbors. Teach them that their diversity is a feature that adds value to the one entity that we are a part of, not a burden. Teach them that the biggest virtue in life is to live a beautiful one. That's all everyone on this planet wants, to live a beautiful life. I think once we understand this concept, we will find a solution to our conflicts. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please do consider subscribing to this channel. Thank you for being a part of this community, and I'll talk to you on the next one.